On the night of December 6, 1991, as the city of Austin, Texas, wound down for the weekend, a sinister presence crept unnoticed into the quiet streets. Inside a small yogurt shop on West Anderson Lane, 4 young girls were blissfully unaware that they were about to become victims of one of the most horrifying crimes in the city's history, a nightmare that would leave the community haunted for decades. The yogurt shop, I can't believe it's yogurt, was a popular hangout for locals, especially teenagers. That night, 17-year-old Eliza Thomas and 17-year-old Jennifer Harbison were working the closing shift. Jennifer's younger sister, 15-year-old Sarah Harbison, and her friend 13-year-old Amy Ayers had stopped by to keep them company after a night out at the mall. The girls were planning a sleepover and were full of the carefree energy that comes with youth. None of them could have known that their lives would be brutally cut short within hours. At 11:03 p.m., the shop's neon open sign flickered off, casting the small yogurt shop into a dim, eerie glow as the girls prepared to close for the night. The evening had been uneventful, with customers coming and going, their laughter and chatter filling the air. By the time the last patrons left, the shop had grown quiet, almost too quiet. The girls, busy cleaning up and chatting about their plans for the night, were unaware of the danger creeping closer. As the minutes ticked by, a sinister presence lingered in the shadows outside, watching, waiting. Someone, or perhaps several people, were biding their time, waiting for the perfect moment to strike, turning the ordinary into a nightmare. At 11:47 p.m., a patrol officer driving along West Anderson Lane noticed thick, dark smoke billowing from the yogurt shop. The sight was alarming, and within minutes, firefighters arrived at the scene to battle the growing inferno. Flames roared hungrily, consuming the small building in a blaze so intense that it lit up the night sky, drawing concerned neighbors and onlookers to the area. The fire spread rapidly, fueled by accelerants that had been deliberately poured throughout the shop, creating an almost inescapable death trap. The heat was suffocating, and the acrid smell of burning materials filled the air, making it nearly impossible for anyone to get close. When the firefighters finally managed to extinguish the flames, the scene inside was nothing short of horrifying. The charred remains of the shop revealed a crime so brutal that even the most seasoned first responders were left shaken. In the back of the shop, amidst the ashes and debris, they discovered the lifeless bodies of 4 young girls. The gruesome state of the scene told a story of unimaginable violence. Each girl had been bound, gagged, and shot execution style. The fire had been a deliberate attempt to destroy evidence, but it couldn't hide the horror of what had taken place. The community was in shock, their collective sense of safety shattered overnight. How could such a heinous and senseless crime happen in their city, a place they had always considered safe? Parents clung to their children tighter, gripped by fear and uncertainty, while neighbors locked their doors and looked over their shoulders. The yogurt shop, once a cheerful spot filled with laughter and the scent of frozen treats, became a grim and haunting reminder of the fragility of life. A dark cloud of grief and unease settled over Austin, and whispers of fear rippled through the streets. The police launched an investigation immediately, vowing to bring the killers to justice. But from the very beginning, the case was plagued with challenges. Leads were scarce, evidence was compromised by the fire, and the brutality of the crime left even seasoned investigators struggling to make sense of it. For the community, the unanswered questions only deepened the horror, leaving them to wonder if the evil that had struck so close to home might still be lurking among them. Witnesses reported seeing 2 men in the yogurt shop shortly before closing, a detail that would later become one of the few tangible leads in the investigation. The men were described as suspicious, their behavior unsettling enough to linger in the minds of those who saw them. One was of medium build, with dark hair and an unremarkable appearance that made him difficult to distinguish from anyone else. The other was heavier set, his demeanor equally unsettling, but offering little in the way of unique identifiers. Despite their descriptions, their identities remained a mystery, and they vanished into the night without a trace. A composite sketch of the two men was circulated widely in the hopes that someone, somewhere would recognize them. Flyers were posted, and the media broadcasted their images, but no solid leads ever emerged. People speculated endlessly about who they might be and what role they could have played, but the trail went cold. The lack of physical evidence at the scene only compounded the frustration of investigators. The fire had destroyed nearly everything, leaving behind little more than ashes and questions. Without DNA, fingerprints, or other forensic clues, the case became a maddening puzzle with pieces that refused to fit together. Months turned into years, and the case grew colder, leaving the families of the victims and the community desperate for answers. Then, in 1999, nearly 8 years after the horrifying murders, there was a breakthrough that reignited hope. 4 young men were arrested in connection with the killings: Maurice Pierce, Michael Scott, Robert Springsteen, and Forrest Wellborn. Their arrests were hailed as a major step forward in solving the case, with law enforcement pointing to confessions obtained during intense, hours-long police interrogations. For a moment, it seemed justice might finally be within reach. However, it didn't take long for those confessions to become a lightning rod for controversy. Allegations of coercion and improper interrogation techniques began to surface. Michael Scott claimed that detectives had used intimidation tactics, even holding a gun to his head, to force him into confessing. Robert Springsteen also recanted his confession, stating it had been made under extreme duress. The arrests, initially seen as a resolution, soon raised more questions than answers, casting a shadow over the investigation. As doubts grew, the community was left wondering if the real killers were still out there, free and unpunished, while the case teetered on the edge of collapse. Despite these claims, both men were convicted. Springsteen in 2001 and Scott in 2002, based largely on their disputed confessions. The convictions provided a fleeting sense of closure for the victims' families, though doubts about the integrity of the confessions lingered. Maurice Pierce and Forrest Wellborn, meanwhile, were not convicted due to insufficient evidence, leaving their alleged involvement shrouded in uncertainty. The community remained divided, with some believing justice had been served, and others questioning whether the true perpetrators had been caught. The shadow of doubt hanging over the case only deepened as time went on. For a brief moment, it seemed like justice had been served, and the families of the victims felt a glimmer of closure. However, in 2006, that fragile sense of resolution was shattered when the convictions of Robert Springsteen and Michael Scott were overturned on appeal. The court found that their confessions, which had formed the backbone of the prosecution's case, had been improperly used against them. Furthermore, it was ruled that the men had been denied their constitutional right to cross-examine each other during their trials, a critical violation that undermined the fairness of the proceedings. With these revelations, the convictions were vacated, and both men were released from prison. The decision plunged the case back into a state of uncertainty, leaving the families devastated and the community questioning whether justice would ever truly be served. The overturned convictions reignited fears that the real killers might still be at large, and the case, once again, became a chilling reminder of the fragility of justice in the face of unresolved tragedy. As the investigation stalled, the haunting question remained: would the truth about that horrific night in 1991 ever come to light? In 2008, advancements in DNA technology provided a long-awaited glimmer of hope in the Austin yogurt shop murders. Forensic experts were able to extract a male DNA profile from evidence collected at the crime scene, a breakthrough that seemed to hold the promise of answers. However, when the DNA was compared to the 4 original suspects, Maurice Pierce, Michael Scott, Robert Springsteen, and Forrest Wellborn, it did not match any of them. This shocking revelation cast serious doubt on their alleged involvement, shaking the foundation of the already fragile case. The discovery reignited questions about who was truly responsible for the brutal murders and whether the real perpetrator, or perpetrators, had been overlooked. Investigators turned their focus to the DNA profile, hoping it would lead them to the killer, but the sample did not match anyone in the national DNA database. Once again, the case was thrust into uncertainty, leaving the victims' families and the community to wonder if justice would ever be served. The DNA evidence, while a breakthrough, became a haunting reminder of how close investigators were to the truth, yet still so far away. It was a clue that deepened the mystery, keeping the case alive but frustratingly unresolved. As the years passed, the Austin yogurt shop murders became one of the most infamous and chilling unsolved crimes in Texas history, a case that refused to fade into obscurity. The families of the 4 young victims, driven by grief and an unrelenting desire for answers, continued to seek justice. They held vigils, organized memorials, and tirelessly advocated for the case to remain a priority for law enforcement. The community, too, rallied behind them, refusing to let the memory of the girls be forgotten. Their faces, once filled with youthful energy and promise, became haunting symbols of innocence lost and a tragedy that demanded resolution. The case became a scar on the city's history, a constant reminder of the evil that had shaken their community. Year after year, the question lingered: would justice ever come for Eliza, Jennifer, Sarah, and Amy? In the absence of answers, theories about the case have proliferated. Some believe the crime was a robbery gone wrong, while others suspect it was a premeditated act of violence. The use of fire to destroy evidence suggests a level of planning and intent that points to a calculated killer or killers. The possibility of a serial offender has also been considered, given the brutality of the crime and the sexual assault of Amy Ayers. Despite the passage of time, the Austin Police Department has not given up. Cold case detectives continue to work on the case, hoping that advancements in technology or new information will finally crack it. The DNA profile remains a key piece of evidence, a silent witness waiting to reveal its secrets. For the families of Eliza, Jennifer, Sarah, and Amy, the pain of their loss is a wound that never fully heals. They have endured decades of grief, anger, and unanswered questions. Yet they remain steadfast in their pursuit of justice, driven by the memory of their daughters and the hope that one day the truth will come to light. The yogurt shop where the murders occurred is long gone, replaced by a new business. But for those who remember that fateful night, the location is a haunting reminder of the lives that were stolen and the evil that walked among them. The case continues to captivate true crime enthusiasts, a chilling tale of innocence lost and justice delayed. As of today, the Austin yogurt shop murders remain an open wound, their tragic mystery still unresolved. The identity of the killer, or killers, remains unknown, leaving the families of the victims trapped in a cycle of grief and unanswered questions. The case is a heartbreaking reminder of how fragile life can be and how deeply evil can strike without warning. For the city of Austin, the memory of that cold December night in 1991 lingers like a shadow, a scar etched into the heart of the community that even time cannot heal.